When everything seems lost, our protagonist finds himself trapped in a cycle of nightmares that repeat every night, a reality where demonic beasts await him in every shadow. But what if I told you that this perpetual nightmare hides a secret? Upon waking from yet another terrifying dream, he feels real pain in his body, as if the wounds were a part of his life. With an indomitable spirit, he discovers that he is not only fighting for his survival, but also uncovering the hidden potential within himself. What happens when the rules of this hostile world begin to change for him? During his training, he absorbs the energies of creatures he has defeated, and with each victory, new abilities are revealed. But how can he harness these powers without being consumed by the very shadows that surround him? The path ahead is fraught with challenges, and the true journey toward his destiny is just beginning. So guys, this is Shin. If you enjoy an overpowered protagonist, a broken system, and absurd evolution, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. And leave a comment to support, because what's coming next is pure insanity. Without further ado, let's get to the video. The story begins in a somewhat eerie forest, with twisted trees and dark moss clinging to everything. The weather here is always cloudy, creating a vibe of danger. In this setting, a young man is fighting for his life, stabbing a knife into the chest of a monster. The beast spits a disgusting slime in his face, complicating the situation even more. The creature opens a gigantic mouth full of sharp teeth, ready to swallow the boy whole. But out of nowhere, a red blur explodes everywhere, indicating he could not escape. Then he wakes up, sweating profusely, realizing that it was all just a nightmare. The pain in his neck is so intense that it feels real, as if he has been truly harmed. The young man sighs tiredly, recalling that he has been suffering from these bad dreams for 12 long years. Outside, the day dawns sunny and peaceful, an absolute contrast to the night he just faced. Later, the boy is seen jotting down the weaknesses of the beasts in a notebook, hoping to survive next time. He gets up from the chair, aware that he can handle the pain that these illusions bring. The room is filled with notes and training equipment, showing how much this kid has prepared. However, what really wears out his mind is the crap of trying to sleep, as the fatigue is him. As soon as he closes his eyes, he is soon transported back to that horrible place, filled with creatures. If he is defeated in the dream, he wakes up in real life feeling all the impact of the disaster that happened because of it. The young man presses his chest in pain, realizing that a normal night's sleep is in Deire. Takes over the guy as he mumbles about this situation. To avoid further suffering, the warrior spent 12 years training in martial arts and survival tactics, and thus he advances with his sword, ready to face the dangers of this endless nightmare. Thanks to all this effort, being defeated and eliminated in that reality has become increasingly rare. But even winning battles, he knows that it does not solve his problem. The warrior realizes that the real difficulty is the lack of true rest. That's why the doctor suggested he try to find a hobby or something he really enjoys to relax his mind. The young man seems to reflect, trying to imagine what this special activity could be, but when he looks up, he sighs, admitting that his desire is simply to be able to sleep. With a face that screams hunger, the fighter reflects that he just wanted one peaceful night, at least once. But out of nowhere, his nose starts to bleed. All of a sudden, he feels a sharp pain in his chest as he coughs up blood and his vision becomes completely blurred. The poor guy's eyes widen, about what is happening to his body. Weak, the young man collapses on the floor of the room and a large red puddle forms around him. With this, he loses consciousness, seeming to have reached his absolute limit. But soon after, the protagonist awakens, finding it that his body feels light, and the headache disappeared. Looking around, he realizes the incredible feeling of having slept well for the first time in 12 years. The young man wonders if he has finally moved on to a better place and ended up in paradise. He continues to observe the leaves of the trees swaying, trying to understand where he is. The forest around him is lush and full of life, with a beautiful waterfall in the background. However, as he leans against the roots of a giant tree, he is startled to recognize the surroundings. The eyes of the survivors widen, realizing that this is the same nightmare world where he suffered for a decade. At that moment, a sudden noise catches his attention, making him turn his head quickly to see what it is. But he hides behind a large root as a monstrous lizard passes by, hunting for prey. The creature, which is bizarre as hell, lets out a terrifying growl, revealing its sharp teeth and disgusting tongue. Still hiding, the young man remembers the amount of blood he lost in the real world before passing out. With that, the kid deduces that his injuries were too severe and that he did not manage to return to his room. And so the warrior kneels, taking a deep breath and trying to think about the next move. Then he stands up, realizing that if he is defeated in this place, there will be nowhere else to go. With a look, the survivor accepts that from now on this nightmare is his new life. Watching the beast, he knows well how the rules work here and what he needs to do to survive. Thinking quickly, the fighter decides to avoid combat and plans to escape to a place that the monsters hate. But when trying to retreat, a new sensation invades his mind. Gripping the hilt of the blade, the young man feels, trying to understand where this sudden emotion came from. Instead of backing away, he draws the weapon quickly and charges forward, with no desire to back down from the fight. The lizard immediately notices the movement, turning its head in at the courage of the now armed human. It concludes that this newfound bravery must be a result of being well rested and of a younger body. Without wasting any time, the creature leaps powerfully towards our boy, ready to crush its target in the air. The beast lets out a deafening roar, descending like a meteor, ready to show all its brutality. The fighter feels every muscle in his body pulsing with energy. With a determined gleam in his eyes, he concentrates his thoughts on just two things: fight with all his strength and win, or execute a precise and devastating move. The young man strikes the large creature, instantly bringing it down, dirtying his clothes with one blow. He turns his head with a face that shows he's not joking, indicating that things have completely changed. With a violent strike, the lizard's body hits the ground, raising a cloud of dust. The creature falls, defeated, while the young man stands there watching the animals fall. In the sky, rays of light begin to clarify the darkness, indicating that something is changing. Without wasting time, the fearless young man mounts on the back of the defeated beast, and with his sword in hand tears its carcass in half. Inside it, something shines strong and blue, catching his attention. The young man holds the luminous sphere, intrigued, trying to decipher what it could be. He wonders if it could have value. After all, it just came out of a monster. Right then, in a moment of madness, he decides to risk it and take a bite of the core. Absorbing all the energy, the warrior exhales a deep sigh of relief. Admiring the majestic trees and the sunlight, up high, an intense gleam in his eyes, he makes a promise to himself: he will survive at any cost, but he knows he needs to focus on one goal above all. Thus the protagonist shoots through the forest like a rocket. With a clear goal, his plan is to head towards the light in search of safe shelter, away from the darkness. Later, the young man finds himself taking a peaceful nap on the branch of a giant tree. The wind dances among the leaves, and with a calm expression he enjoys every second of this rest. Keeping his eyes closed, a gentle smile forms on his face. After all, he can finally sleep in peace. After a night of deep sleep, he wakes up renewed, full of energy. Looking at the sky through the dancing leaves, he prepares to resume his journey. A month has passed since he started this journey, cutting through brush and leaving shadows behind, seeking a new direction. While observing the forest, he reflects that just because the will to fight strikes, it doesn't mean he should go hunting for any beast hidden there. Behind a tree, he spots a giant bat devouring its prey, and realizes that it would be madness to risk his life unnecessarily. However, his heart races, revealing that the instinct to fight is hard to control. With a confused expression and a slight smile, the survivor realizes that he only goes into action when that insatiable hunger strikes. Therefore, he advances and, delivering a precise blow, takes down the winged creature in the blink of an eye. One of the reasons for this is to conquer that brilliant core kept inside the beasts. He then gives in again to the call of power, biting the luminous item and sucking that mysterious energy into his body. After wiping his face clean, he realizes that devouring these spheres has provided him the chance to absorb the incredible strength of the monsters. Later, while resting on a log, the fighter notices that adapting to this new world has become much easier with this method. Moreover, the guy rummaged through the leather pouch at his waist and remembered an important detail. In his hand, a bronze plate appeared that belonged to the former owner of this body, a mercenary. The craziest thing of all, the protagonist can read the strange letters inscribed on the metal. With wide eyes, the adventurer makes a quick reflection on what it truly means to have found something like this. This proves that yes, other people are still out there, living in this dangerous universe. Resuming his walk, the young man finally spots a clearing illuminated by sunlight, but suddenly stops abruptly, surprised by something on the ground. He is shocked to notice a metal structure partly hidden among the brush. The giant trap there was clearly used to capture large predators passing through. Looking closely, the explorer puts the pieces together and deduces the seriousness of this discovery. In a moment of impulsiveness, he leaps over a colossal trunk. Filled with hope of finding humans nearby, emerging from the forest, he spots a clear and radiant place, where he finally encounters a wooden cabin erected in the middle of nowhere. His face lights up with surprise and hope upon realizing that it is indeed a human dwelling. Without hesitation, he knocks on the open door and peeks inside, asking if anyone is home. As he receives no answer, the explorer decides to enter and soon makes a curious discovery. On the table, he touches the cover of an old and mysterious book with those same strange letters. As he flips through the pages, the young man realizes that it is a great record about the realm of monsters. His eyes widen instantly because he has just found a gold mine. Reading carefully, he notes that the histories and mysteries of this world are all laid bare within. With a serious expression, he deduces that the journal is absolutely necessary for survival. But suddenly, a heavy noise on the wooden floor breaks the silence, catching his attention. When he looks up, he comes face to face with an old man with white hair holding a crossbow pointed at him. The old lantern bearer is wanting to know who the guy is before shooting without mercy. The protagonist, thrilled to see a human, asks if the old man really thinks he is a bandit. Trying to stay, the young man raises his hands and says he only entered out of curiosity. But the old man doesn't want to talk and orders him to get out of there as quickly as possible. Not wanting to act rashly, the fighter agrees, showing that he doesn't want to cause trouble. But before leaving, he takes one last look at that valuable source of information. Holding the book, he politely asks if he could take it, promising to pay if necessary. At this moment, the elderly man furrows his brow, suspicious, asking what the young man would do if he refused. Looking into the old man's eyes, the young man thinks he needs it to survive. With that, he discreetly moves his hand towards his waist, ready to draw his sword if necessary. At that instant he reflects that if the old man does not cooperate, he will have to become a thief to obtain the book. Suddenly he leaps into the room, with his hand already on the weapon. The old man is there with his eyes fixed on the young man's chest, not even blinking. The boy observes the elderly man closely and realizes he has no idea how strong he is, but thinks he could win. However, the hunter lets out a heavy sigh and lowers his weapon, realizing that the situation doesn't have to end in tragedy. The old man, with a mischievous smile, reveals the truth. A real bandit wouldn't ask to read a book and introduces himself as the rector. Seeing the tension alleviate, the boy relaxes and decides to share that his real name is Kim Wood. The hunter scratches his beard and finds the name a bit strange. Then the young man suggests that they call him Jin, which is less complicated. With sweat trickling down, he notices that people have difficulty with his pronunciation. Hector holds the book and warns that the item is valuable, so the kid will have to pay a hefty price if he wants to read it, but he will have to mark this debt. The old man gives the guide and asks only that the young man help with everyday tasks. And so the night descends upon the forest, as if asking for a well-deserved rest. Finally, our boy finds a shelter to take a break and rest. Later, a warm soup bubbles over the fire, bringing a cozy atmosphere to the cabin. The owner of the place tells the boy to eat, showing that despite his grumpy demeanor, he has a heart. The warrior smells the homemade food that he hasn't had in a long time. As he takes the first spoonful, a tear rolls down and he thinks that perhaps that old man is an angel in disguise. Oh, quickly, before the chaos continues, subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Man, this helps a lot to strengthen the channel and bring more insane stories like this. And seriously, if you are enjoying it so far and haven't left a like yet, you're really slacking, huh? The next day, the hunter prepares to leave and the fighter asks if he will take long on the mission. With a serious look, the old man heads into the forest, focused on getting revenge on the creature that took his friend. Noticing the heavy expression of the hunter, the young man realizes that his prey must be a sinister beast. The old man leaves the cabin with his weapon, while the boy stays behind, reflecting on the dangers that await him outside. Taking advantage of his free time, he devours each page of the guide, eager for information about that territory. The reading reveals that everything began in the Northern Empire, where greed swept through an entire city. The king of that time, consumed by ambition, tried to open a forbidden portal to the beyond, thinking he would find the absolute truth. He unleashed a devastating force. Suddenly, a black tower full of malevolence arises in the kingdom, heralding the apocalypse. From within it, grotesque monsters, thirsty for human flesh, emerge. In 9 years, these creatures took everything, turning the North into a true demonic realm. To survive, humans formed an alliance and erected a colossal barrier to block the advance of evil. Upon closing the book, the young man feels the weight of tragedy in the pages. Thoughtful, he realizes the story is interesting, but something there doesn't add up. The text says that the further one ventures into this territory, the stronger the monsters become. However, he recalls that the beasts lose strength when they approach the light, and that is bizarre. In the forest, Hector is seen running with his crossbow, fleeing from something that created a sinister atmosphere. In the cabin, a young man wonders what kind of thing the old man has gotten involved with before finding that shelter. The hunter, a trapper, notes that his age weighs heavily when trying to escape from mortal danger. Behind him, a pack of demonic wolves advances, burning in their eyes, ready to rip apart their prey. The old man then puts his foot on the board and runs, trying to gain ground against these swift and deadly beasts. Suddenly, one of the wolves leaps to bite, but our hero slips and dodges, narrowly escaping. He tries to retaliate by shooting arrows while distancing himself in search of a better position, but the werewolf dodges the attacks like a professional. The creature displays its red eyes and sharp teeth, about to devour its prey. Seeing that his shots are ineffective, the old man curses, aware that his time may be near. At that moment, he notices the young man walking towards danger. The boy leaps over the elderly man, drawing a huge machete with an expression. Hector's eyes widen in disbelief, unable to understand the young man's suicidal courage. In the heights, the protagonist focuses on the target with a gaze that he knows what he is doing. He propels himself onto a tree, making the wood crack, flying high over the forest. The warrior prepares his blade, ready to deliver a precise blow. The monster tries to defend itself by raising its monstrous claws, but the speed of the human is something out of this world, and the sword descends like lightning. A perfect strike pierces the beast's defense, cutting through everything in its path, and thus the werewolf's body is split in half. While the young man lands softly, watching his leader being eliminated, the other wolves freeze in fear. The beasts retreat, growling quietly. The old Hector, astonished, watches the scene in silence, confronted by the power he has witnessed. Next to the fallen monster, cleaning his weapon, the young man turns to him and asks if that creature was really considered strong. The hunter, still in shock, retorts if the boy has any doubts about the strength of a werewolf. Seriously, Hector insists that these beasts are insane and lethal. The young man listens, maintaining expression as he absorbs everything. Then he shifts his attention to the rest of the pack emerging from the trees. The wolves, anxious and with their claws out, want to know who the challenger is, but the boy quickly counts about 40 of them and knows that one wrong move could be the end. So he devises a plan to focus on the second in command, hoping to undermine the morale of the entire pack. In that moment, the young man's gaze shines an intense red, revealing his thirst for battle. Spotting a larger specimen ahead, he makes his decision on who will be his first victim, and the boy then leaps into the air with all his might, surrounded by a dark and menacing aura. The beast faced the attack with its bright blue eyes, sensing that the time of its end was approaching. The young man's red glow seemed to penetrate the monster's soul, completely paralyzing it. Realizing the real danger, the creature froze and began to tremble, filled with fear in front of the human. At that moment, the rest of the pack became confused, not understanding their leader's hesitation. Without a second thought, the predators began to run in desperation to save their skins, and thus the monsters let out whimpers of terror as they fled as fast as they could. The battlefield was left completely empty. As the wolves disappeared into the dense forest, he observed that mass escape, holding his heavy blade ready for anything. The old hunter could hardly believe that such valiant creatures had fled without fighting. Then, the traveler began to reflect on the veteran. He truly knows how to assess the situation. The pack leader let out a scream upon realizing he had no chance against the man. With the threat eliminated, the atmosphere in the forest awed, and both returned to the safety of the cabin. Inside, the veteran presented the carcass of the beast, explaining that the reward for its head was 40 gold coins. Upon hearing the amount, the young man asked if that was a lot of money in that place. The old man confirmed, saying that this sum was enough to live well for about 7 years without working. The young man thought about how such a weak monster could have such a high value. He realized he had found a very easy way to get rich in this new world. He reflected that it was enough to hunt similar creatures whenever he needed cash to fill his pockets. At that moment, the boy concluded that life there could be much more than in the last 12 years. Then, the hunter began to set aside several useful items, like skins and a detailed map of the region, to give to his guest. The old man touched the skin of the werewolf, and remembering how dangerous the creature was to the common people of the village, he then warned the young man that he could sell the leather for a fair price. But Jim asked if he could really accept something so valuable. The old man insisted, stating that the value was fair since the boy helped complete his quest for revenge. The old man extended his hand in a gesture, acknowledging the worth of his new ally. The veteran looked into the eyes of the young man and sincerely thanked him for the help, wishing they would meet again in the future. They both shook hands, sealing in friendship. The protagonist thanked for everything he learned there and prepared to continue his journey into the unknown. Outside, the sun lit the way, indicating that the new chapter was about to begin. For the traveler carrying his new equipment, the warrior bowed in farewell while the old man watched from the door. Thus, the survivor followed the forest road with the intention of exploring every corner of this mysterious universe. Meanwhile, a bizarre creature watched from the top of a large rock. This creature had strange horns and bright blue eyes. The beast let out a low growl, insisting that the danger in that region was still far from over. Finally, the survivor spotted the large wooden walls of the pioneer village. Standing before the gate, he reflected that the place seemed much larger and more organized than he had imagined. Thus, he passed by the guards and entered the village, carrying all his items on his back. Walking through the streets, the fighter noticed that the atmosphere there was as if everyone was ready to fight. At that moment, several muscular armed men glared at a newcomer with unfriendly looks. The protagonist wondered if all this distrust was simply because he was a complete stranger in the city. He concluded that, in that cruel world, people could become much more threatening than the monsters themselves. Glancing around, the adventurer spotted a tavern sign. Deciding to enter, he sought more information. The interior was crowded with mercenaries drinking and discussing the day's missions. As he crossed the hall, the young man drew everyone's attention, who stopped to watch him. Arriving at the bar, the tavern keeper offered a beer while the young man placed his goods on the wood. However, he declined the drink and directly asked where he could find a man named Jacob. Suddenly, a guy sitting right behind him turned around to hear his name being mentioned. This was Jacob, who introduced himself with a roguish face and a rather expression. The young man explained that he had been sent by old Hector to negotiate the valuable skin of the slain werewolf. The merchant was to learn that such a beast had been defeated and brought to him. Observing the confusion, the warrior decided not to correct Jacob, letting him believe that the veteran was the real hero. From the story, Jacob's eyes widened as he realized it was a genuine and highly valuable werewolf skin. The other mercenaries in the tavern were impressed, thinking that old Hector was still a legend. With a mischievous smile, the merchant realized he had made a great deal with this rare merchandise. In moments, greed took over his face as he plotted his next dirty trick. Then several brutes approached, surrounding the young man to ensure he wouldn't try to escape. But the young man faced the situation seriously, realizing he had fallen into a bandit ambush. Jacob threw the item over his shoulders and threatened the boy, demanding he disappear if he wanted to stay alive. Then the adventurer got furious, thinking the veteran really believed that scammer. The guy is a true crook, thinking highly of himself by claiming this is just a way to recover losses from the past. He laughs for no reason while holding that expensive leather, as if he already had everything under control. At that exact moment, the protagonist's eyes glow in a bright red hue, making it clear that his fury was about to explode. He clenches his fist with considerable force, reflecting on whether it was really worth getting rid of that human garbage just for a piece of leather. Suddenly, the con man throws the rest of his drink in the young man's face, deliberately humiliating him in front of everyone. Then the thug orders the boy to stop acting smart and get out of the tavern. At that moment, the fighter silently lets the drink run down his face while the hatred within him only grows. But soon he gets up from the chair with a heavy aura that terrifies those around him. The wooden mug rolls across the floor as the young man begins to walk slowly through the hall. The merchant, thinking the boy has given up, releases a smile praising the choice he made. But then a sudden noise makes Jacob lose his smile and turn around, confused. In that second, the protagonist strikes the tavern's structure with a precise blow, clearly showing that his patience had run out. Soon he calls the con man by name while drops of drink run from his hair, a killer glance. He warns that if his plan was to deceive someone, he should have aimed for the neck and not the back. The merchant, in realization, realizes he poked the wrong beast, awakening the fury of a dangerous adversary. The trickster then orders the thugs to deal with the young man, as he seems unafraid for his own life. One of the thugs charges in, as he tries to hit the young man with his heavy weapon, but the warrior reflects that eliminating types like that wouldn't weigh on his heart. He blocks the attack, with a deafening noise of metal clashing in the hall. The brute's eyes widen as he realizes that the physical strength of this newcomer was something out of the ordinary. In that instant, the protagonist's eyes shine brightly, indicating that the next move would be and, with impressive speed, the boy moves among the enemies, delivering precise end blows. Another thug tries to use his axe to crush the target but ends up, by the timing of the attack, missing entirely. He only hits the ground, while the young man is already positioning himself to finish it. With that, the fighter plants his foot on the ground, preparing a move that no one there can predict. Then, he delivers a kick to a heavy table, sending it straight at the opponents who were trying to sneak up from behind. As the thugs at the sight of the object coming their way, with no time to escape, the sound of a blade cutting through the air echoes as the hero executes his plan with mastery. After the strike, silence takes over the environment, and the marks of the fight spread across the tavern floor. With a dirty face and a gaze, the survivor stares at what remains of his opponents. In that moment, Jacopo trembles in wondering where this monster in human form came from. He realizes that he messed with the wrong guy and may end up losing everything because of his greed. Making a circular movement with his sword, the young man breaks the enemy's defense, scattering marks all over the tavern floor. The warrior advances with speed, hitting the next opponent without giving time for defense. With a direct strike, he hits a brute who is thrown far away, feeling the weight of our protagonist's strength. But the fighter does not stop there. He spins his body to deliver another attack against the remaining mercenaries. The blade strikes the last henchman, who falls defeated as silence returns to reign amid the chaos. Standing among the opponents, the young man exposes his red eyes, gleaming like a beast ready to continue its deadly hunt. His face displays an expression of total plus, which scares even the bravest. The merchant for everyone to run, realizing that the danger was right in front of him. Thus, the few who still have strength try to flee in terror, attempting to escape from the relentless warrior. But the crook manages to throw himself out of the tavern in an attempt to save his skin. Falling onto the dirt ground, he turns around, trembling in pleasure, trying to understand how everything went so wrong. Suddenly, when he looks back, he encounters a colossal and dark presence arising in the village. A giant red wolf appears, growling, and Jacob wonders what such a beast is doing in the village. At this moment, the protagonist leaps over the fallen merchant, landing firmly between him and the new threat, facing the beast. The young man maintains his combat stance while the crook shrinks to the ground, not knowing where to flee. However, soon the young man becomes trying to remember where that creature that seems to be following him came from. A wolf emits loud and aggressive sounds, showing its sharp teeth to try to defeat the human. At this moment, the survivor realizes that this is the creature he saw in the forest after the last battle. With his gaze locked, the fighter wonders if the creature truly came all this way just to meet its end. Receiving the heavy aura from the young man, the wolf becomes paralyzed, feeling a shiver run through its furry body. Then, the giant beast begins to whine and thus lays down on the ground. Acting in a completely unexpected way, the creature then starts wagging its tail, displaying a contagious, resembling a needy puppy. The wolf jumps around, showing an act that leaves everyone around confused. The mercenaries stand still, not understanding what is happening with that monster. But the young man observes the scene with thinking that the behavior of this mutt is simply fuff. The creature looks at him with expression, waiting for a little attention. At that moment, Jacob and his allies are left speechless by the sudden change of the wild beast. The protagonist then points at the bandits and gives a direct order, telling the animal to bite its targets. The red wolf, with an instantly changing expression, becomes serious and ready for action. And, with a powerful leap, it pounces on the first henchman, showing that it is still a great danger. The mighty beast takes down the bandit effortlessly and finishes him off, while the others just stand still, lacking the courage to act. In a matter of seconds, the monster eliminates the threat as if it were just a toy. With a big smile of satisfaction, it remarks that the beast handled those crooks very well. A henchman, pale as a ghost, crawls away in agony, realizing that his situation has become critical. The animal doesn't stop and continues attacking the rest of the bandits, ensuring that no one escapes. Jacob, trying to think fast, looks for a way out of the mess he got himself into, but the young man with disdain sees the merchant looking foolish for trying to deceive him. Then, in absolute despair, the bandit kneels and begs for his life, promising that he would do anything the warrior commanded. But inside, he was boiling with hatred, plotting a cruel revenge as soon as he escaped. Suddenly, a heavy blade strikes the ground right beside his head, making the crook tremble with fear, while blood spasms flow from him. The young man realizes that this trickster's situation is much worse than he imagined, and at that very moment lowers his head, tasting the metallic flavor of blood, mentally cursing his opponent. With a wicked look, he questions who this crook thinks he is fooling. Then the memory of the past surfaces, showing the hero when he was still apologizing for everything in a boring office. Remembering his old job, he recalls the manager saying that the company was in trouble, and being a nice guy, he accepted the apologies without realizing that he was being played. Days passed, and the payment, which had already been a week overdue, turned into a month and then 2 months. Trying to collect what was rightfully his, the employee sees the boss playing golf instead of paying. The boss, indignant, calls the protagonist cheeky just because he wanted his hard-earned salary, that today's youth were selfish and that everyone should help each other in tough times. Returning to the present, the warrior observes the traitor on the ground, feeling the weight of the misery he has lived. For so long he stays away while the villain holds his hurt face and lets out a sigh of relief for still being alive. The merchant, by the intimidating presence of the survivor, sees that there is not a drop of mercy there. Suddenly, a sickly smile appears on the rogue's face, revealing that he still has a low trick up his sleeve. He quickly draws a sharp dagger and lunges from behind, trying to catch the target at close range. With pure hatred, he screams for the young man to die, hoping to end this dispute once and for all. Receiving the movement, the young man turns his head, his red eyes shining, showing that he was already expecting the treacherous attack. He uses his heavy blade to block the dagger, leaving his opponent clueless on what to do. He explains that types like this merchant are the biggest deceivers, but they never truly feel remorse. The rogue's eyes then widen, realizing that he has dug his own grave before the hero. And with a devastating strike, the traitor's fate is sealed. There, in the middle of the village, the lifeless body of the rogue falls, showing that this madman's justice is relentless. The young man's gaze shines brightly, without a trace of hesitation. He vows that he will never again allow himself to be treated as weak or as someone anyone can deceive. The fighter takes a deep breath and decides that it is time to focus on his next step in this unknown universe. Soon the red wolf appears, bringing a pouch of coins in its mouth, proving to be extremely helpful and friendly to him. With a swift movement, the animal drops the small leather bag on the ground, awakening the curiosity of its new battle commander. Inside the bag, the gold coins shine as if they were stars, proving that the reward for the work has arrived. Observing the scene, the warrior wonders where the beast acquired such cleverness to act like a true professional raider. He asks if the creature really wishes to accompany him on future missions and adventures across this continent. A gesture of friendship, the young man touches the animal's fur and it closes its eyes, feeling the protection and affection of his master. In that moment, the gentle touch seals a true alliance between the human and the beast, who are now official battle partners. Looking at the creature, our boy realizes that having an ally like that will be the key to surviving in that cruel world. Calling his partner clever, he smiles for the first time, feeling that luck was finally turning. He asserts that the two will get along from now on, as he prepares to leave that place. And so, the journey continues with new challenges approaching and the story of the monster hunter opening a new chapter. The sky reflects the passage of time, showing that the day is about to dawn, after a night full of victories and discoveries. Now, in a soft bed, the protagonist wakes up, feeling great, with his body covered in bandages. After so many fights, with a relaxed smile, he concludes that he had a perfect sleep and regained his strength. In that moment, he stretches pleasantly, ready for any challenge that may come his way. Washing his face in a wooden basin, he tries to wash away all traces of the intense battles he faced. With a deep sigh, he feels the coolness of the water as he relaxes his muscles. After eliminating the enemies, the warrior reflects on how he took the lives of several people for the first time, but wonders why he does not feel a single drop of guilt or remorse for what he did in the village. He stares into the void, trying to understand if his mind is cooling down because of this cruel world. The hero complains ruthlessly about the Demon King. The thrill of fighting against humans was the same as when he faced monsters in the forest. With a hand on his chest, the fighter feels his heart racing and soon realizes that something very crazy is happening inside him. He glances at his own body and notices that his essence is changing into something quite different from what it was. He wonders if he caught some strange curse or if this transformation is just his survival instinct screaming. And so the rogue walks alongside the giant beast, thinking that his new life will be much richer and full of good things. At that moment, the kid decided it was time to live intensely, without worrying about the rules of the old world. With the heavy leather in hand, he finally approached the 5th Pioneer City to close the deals. There, the boy warned the Red Wolf to stay nearby to avoid causing confusion among the crowd. As he walked through the streets, the survivor searched for the headquarters of the Order Alliance, where he intended to trade his prey for a good handful of gold. He thought he needed to be quick to secure the reward, and wondered if he should still call his mongrel companion. Suddenly, he spotted the organization's building, with a slouching employee yawning at the service window. Upon reaching the counter, the man asked if this was where hunting matters were handled. With a swift motion, he threw the blue hide onto the table, creating a dry noise that woke the attendant immediately. At that moment, the hero stated, very seriously, that he was there to collect payment for the elimination of the wild beast. But the guy gave a disdainful glance at the material and said it looked like dog leather, asking him to stop joking around. The attendant's eyes widened upon realizing that what was on the counter was not from an ordinary creature. The attendant then exclaimed that the hide was in fact from a genuine and rare werewolf. He asked if the young man had been able to take down such a powerful creature on his own. The young man confirmed with complete. The hunter then waited seated in a luxurious room while those in charge organized the payment for the feat. Soon another official entered the room, apologizing for the delay in verifying the authenticity of the precious item. Thus the man handed over a heavy sack filled with gold, confirming that the werewolf's downfall was indeed real. The warrior looked at the sum, thinking that it would allow him to live without doing anything for about 7 years. At that moment, the shine of the coins reflected in his eyes, and he could hardly believe the money he had just earned. He realized that the feeling of holding so much money was very different from the adrenaline of the hunts. But soon the official got his attention again, seeming to want to discuss something very important. The man asked if the young man would be willing to take on a new special mission in exchange for more gold. With that, the protagonist showed immediate interest. He questioned what the next challenge of this journey would be. The employee explained that a strange creature had emerged in a nearby quarry and was causing quite a problem. The man informed that the workers were terrified, unable to mine the bloodstones due to the danger. The halt was affecting the economy of the city, and all the chaos could spread. He warned that this creature was much stronger than any werewolf that had appeared around there. Nevertheless, the officer expressed full confidence that the young man would manage to solve this big problem. Then the survivor asked, with a serious look, what the name and type of the beast he had to hunt were. The man revealed that the monster was called Crazy Skull, and the reward for his head was 70 gold coins. Moreover, the young man realized that he had crossed paths with this creature before. Remembering the beast's brutal size, the young man then analyzed that something had a robust skull that functioned as natural armor. The beast's forehead was protected, and its aggressiveness was terrifying, being much more lethal and strong than any werewolf he had ever faced. The warrior recalled that it took him a month to overcome this challenge, having been defeated 28 times beforehand. But the officer, anxious, asked if the young man truly believed he could handle such a dangerous beast. At that moment, the adventurer maintained silence, processing the information while fixing his gaze on the man. The hunter then smiled confidently, and stated that this creature would certainly be his next big prey. Walking along the edge of the excavation, he thought about how the work had stopped because of that beast that was considered a danger. Observing the sinister atmosphere of the mine, the young man decided that he needed to put an end to that quickly so he could get out of there. Suddenly, a voice echoed asking the traveler to wait a moment before continuing his way inside the place. In this scenario, with red hair, she asserted that her group had arrived first and that the newcomer should respect the turn of those who were ahead. With a not-so-friendly look, the protagonist wondered since when there was a line to hunt monsters in this insane world. Sensing the tension in the air, the stranger felt awkward and tried to change the tone of the conversation to avoid irritating the fighter. Seeming quite angry, the captain then suggested that the young man join their team. That way they could all hunt the strange beast together and share the risks. The survivor contemplated the proposal, thinking that waiting for the group to finish their task would be a huge waste of time for his plans. Although he would have to share the profit, the warrior reflected that perhaps working as a team could be the best move at that moment, but he remained on high alert, remembering that it was not safe to trust strangers in that treacherous place. Then, the young man asked why they wanted a stranger in the group since they already had many members ready for battle. The redhead chuckled awkwardly and admitted he preferred to focus on everyone's safety rather than the initial performance of his men in the field. Looking at the boy, the mercenary confidently stated that the newcomer seemed to be an incredibly strong and very experienced fighter. Noticing the man's respect, the hunter asked what was the reason for distrusting his actual strength in combat. The group leader then pointed to the red wolf while a blonde woman petted the beast without showing an ounce of fear. The woman remarked that those animals were known for being independent and that she had never seen one follow a human so loyally. The hero was shocked to realize that his friend disobeyed the order to stay hidden and appeared in front of everyone looking for food. The beast was devouring a massive piece of juicy meat that it had received from the woman, leaving its owner dying of envy over the meal. The creature continued to indulge in the food, not caring at all about its grumpy master's angry look. A piece of juicy meat fell into the dust, while the delicious smell spread through the quarry air. The beast, with a pleading look, gazed at the fallen piece of meat, and then stared at its master, as if to say, "Look at this feast I'm offering you." But the young man became furious with the animal's boldness and asked if that was what it thought, if it was a pig or what. The meat began to shimmer in such a seductive way that it made the hero's stomach growl, almost begging for a piece. He tried to ignore it, but the memory of the last time he had truly enjoyed a meal in this cruel world returned to his mind. However, he soon thought of the dog's slobber that was on the food, as the meat was covered in dirt and internal conflict arises as he tries to preserve his dignity and resist the urge to grab the rest of the ground. Then, the blonde woman, realizing the situation, springs into action and offers a fresh piece of meat straight from her bag. The hunter is completely stunned by the kind gesture of the stranger, and his eyes shine with joy. Instantly, he cannot help but think that at that moment the girl looked like a true goddess sent from the heavens to save him. Soon, the group of mercenaries begins to enter the dark caves of the mine, ready to start the hunting operation. Savoring each bite, Jim realizes that the seasoning on that dish is simply insane, far superior to the horrible meals he was used to eating. The young woman wastes no time and mentions that they have not formally introduced themselves, striking up a conversation with the newcomer. The red-haired captain introduces himself as Jonathan from the Black Marley group, while the woman introduces herself as Claire. The protagonist almost reveals his real name but opts to call himself just Jimmy, keeping an air of mystery. Jonathan, appearing, states that they have finally arrived at the exact spot where the crazy skull usually appears. The leader's flattery is followed by a call for the trap experts to start preparing the heavy nets to catch the monster. He calls his partner to take position and initiate what promises to be an extremely difficult confrontation. A creative and brilliant aura begins to enshroud the area, leaving Jim impressed by the power that was revealing itself. Jim watches the sorceress float, surrounded by a greenish glow and magical feathers that seem to dance in the air. A circle of light forms over an old book, revealing a magic that is only heard of in legends. At this point, Claire closes her eyes and asks for a special blessing to protect everyone in that dangerous territory. The magic, translated into feather paste, hits Jonathan, leaving him with astonishing speed. For an hour, the captain's gaze shows that he feels so light he could take flight right there in the quarries. Claire warns him that he has only 3 to 5 minutes to execute a risky maneuver against the beast with that green glow at his feet. Jonathan prepares to lure the beast towards the ambush site. Out of nowhere, the redhead takes off in a frenzied run, with the others now just watching his exit. William notices that his buddy is much more agile and reflects that the magic of this world is indeed quite interesting. A fighter questions whether he could learn to use these magical tricks if he decided to train with the master. One of the men shouts warning that there is no time to lose as the monster crazy skull is approaching. The mercenaries firmly hold the ropes of the net, anchoring themselves to the rocks. They wait for the right moment to strike, maintaining their stances. Jimmy observes the plan to encircle the beast and unleash all its power, thinking that the idea is quite sensible. Yet he still maintains a serious expression and wonders if the strategy would really work against such a brutal monster. At that moment, a huge creature with monstrous horns emerges from the shadows and charges at the guy who is serving as bait. Surrounded by adrenaline, the commander shouts for the trap team to get ready to capture the fierce creature. The beast lunges with fury, showing its sharp teeth, while Jonathan uses his newfound agility to evade the lethal blow. The soldiers scream in despair as they confirm that the rock demon has finally revealed itself to everyone. In a synchronized movement, the enormous net falls over the beast, which roars furiously, trying to break free from the ropes. At this moment, everyone pulls the ropes with all their might, trying to pin the opponent to the ground to ensure he doesn't escape. Jonathan then gives the order for the spear team to attack with everything while the beast struggles violently in the heavy net. The warriors quickly position themselves, raising their sharp weapons to deliver the first blow against the enemy. At this point, they manage to reach it through the ropes, trying to pierce the thick skin of this monster, but the monster lets out a roar of pure fury, demonstrating that the attack has only made it even angrier and more dangerous. Many soldiers lose their balance while trying to hold the weight of this monster, this being that fights to break free from the restraints. The opponent's eyes glow with a deadly red, revealing that its strength is far superior to what the mercenaries imagined. Observing the chaos, Jim realizes that things were not going as planned, and that there was an increasing danger for everyone. The creature begins dragging soldiers across the dirt ground, completely destroying the defensive formation. Jonathan shouts for them to hold the ropes tight, but his allies are falling before the brute strength of this enormous adversary. The beast roars again with uncontrollable fury, tearing apart the bindings that were supposed to keep it restrained. The creature's eyes reveal a terrifying thirst for blood. It charges forward, unconcerned with a group of mercenaries trying to surround it. Glia watches the onslaught with pure terror, feeling that her life is at stake. At this moment, the sorceress tries to retreat, but realizes that the enemy is too fast and she does not have time to cast the new defensive spell. Then, like in an action movie, our boy appears out of nowhere and positions himself in front of the girl, ready to protect her. Jim plants his feet in the ground, feeling the overwhelming pressure of the enemy's advance, but firm in his combat stance, almost as if he had superhuman strength. The hunter grabs one of the creature's enormous horns tightly, stopping it instantly. At that moment, the hero's face is very close to the creature's sharp teeth, which are roaring in anger at a human having interrupted its movement. The blonde shouts that Gwendy is in trouble, but the guy seems barely to care about what is coming. He glances over his shoulder and tells her to relax, assuring her that everything is under control. Then the young man focuses on the reddish gaze of the beast, stating that he knows exactly how to deal with it. At that instant, the hunter's gaze shines brightly, revealing that he has figured out the formula to defeat that threat once and for all. Holding the monstrous enemy's fangs tightly, the fighter faces the beast with all his firmness. Then he takes a step back, dodging to avoid being crushed by the creature's massive weight. Delivering a quick strike, he seeks a vulnerable point in the monster's natural defense. With sharp focus, the hunter prepares his next deadly move, while holding his blade at the ready. And then, the hero hits the target with a precision that would impress even the most demanding of instructors. In the midst of the fierce combat, he pauses for a second to reflect that, despite having grown stronger, the resilience of this enemy still causes him to fall off his horse. Fleeing with fury, the beast shows that it is not easy to fall before a human. Sensing the approaching danger, the young man dodges a side attack that could end his journey, while the blonde mage uses her powers to cast a magical support toward her new ally, wrapping him in light and feathers. The protagonist feels a wave of energy coursing through his muscles, feeling lighter. The adventurer realizes he can now move quickly across the battlefield. A smile appears on the warrior's face. Captain Jonathan and his men, seeing the boy's determination, offer to help in the final fray, but he orders everyone to stay back because he wants to handle the situation alone. The magical energy continues to swirl around the fighter, ensuring he maintains his heightened speed. Running with all possible determination, the survivor advances against the giant beast to put his plan into action. He thinks there are some crucial details the master needs to know to bring down this type of creature. Although it seems invincible, the fighter realizes that, in fact, this creature is just a huge boar. While the beast moves like lightning in a straight line, it has a terrible time changing direction. Using this weakness to his advantage, the young man plans to corner the opponent against the rocks to secure victory. Jimmy leaps toward the beast while dodging its charges, but at that moment his foot slips on the mine floor and the beast collapses. The colossal creature then crashes into the rocks, raising a cloud of dust. The young man realizes that the spell made him too fast and now he is moving effortlessly. At this moment, the fighter examines the enemy's fangs, which function as natural weapons, but he realizes that his machete cannot cut that hard bone, so he needs another strategy. With that, the guy decides his next strike will be at the monster's snout, the most sensitive part. Delivering a powerful blow, our boy hits true, causing a liquid to spill out as the creature screams in pain. The creature's suffering only intensifies, making it impossible to continue attacking with the same strength. The protagonist then seizes the opportunity and jumps again to finish everything at once. The blade pierces the thick skin of the opponent, causing the ground to shake under the hunter's feet. With the precise movement, they wait for another heavy attack to ensure that the enemy does not rise again. At this moment, the young man spins his body in the air, completing the sequence of blows with absurd mastery. He displays a look of victory as the dust settles, revealing the devastating outcome of the fight. Jonathan and Claire then run out of the cave, extremely concerned about what might have happened. But upon arriving there, the mercenaries are shocked to see only rubble and complete silence in the quarry. At that moment, the girl desperately searches for her friend, trying to find any sign that everything is all right. Suddenly, a giant wolf emerges among the rocks with a zen expression, as if nothing had happened. The companions are confused, looking at the creature while trying to understand what bizarre situation this is. Finally, the beast lets out a long yawn, indicating that the fight ended too quickly for its liking. The young man returns to the group, with the animal companion following calmly, observing the surroundings of the mine. With a dirty face, he reflects that he cannot leave the essence of the beast behind after all this effort. Or else the adventurer announces that the monster has been eliminated, but the mercenaries do not react to the news. As the hero arrives, the giant beast sniffs the carcass of the prey, which is now just a pile of lifeless flesh. Shocked by the victory, the captain says he has never seen anyone defeat such a danger alone in the field, but suddenly the red wolf growls, sensing the new bizarre presence that has emerged from the shadows. The partners stand alert, trying to grasp what is causing the wolf's agitation. Then, out of nowhere, another giant boar appears from a dark tunnel, showing that the conflict is not over. The redhead yells for the team to prepare for combat, but the blonde asks everyone to wait a second, for he noticed a very important detail. The beast walks slowly, revealing that it is accompanied by two cubs who seem quite scared of the situation. A small one makes cute sounds while hiding behind the mother's enormous legs, seeking safety. The mother approaches with a face letting out a moan as if she only wants to take care of her family. The protagonist stands there quietly, wondering if the situation really needs more conflict. Lee, the mother, approaches, picks up her cubs and moves away from the chaos, showing that she does not want trouble. Now everyone is just watching the boar leave quietly as the adrenaline from the fight gradually fades away. From the top of the quarry, Jonathan is unsure if the creature is really leaving and decides not to attack, realizing that the conflict no longer poses a real danger. Claire comments that the beast probably just wanted to raise her cubs there and feels for the whole situation. The hero finally observes the departure of the family, thinking that at least they decided to leave without causing more stress. Night falls over the fifth pioneering city while the moon shines in the sky, illuminating the rooftops of the little houses. At this moment, the lighting of a tavern glows, signaling that the band of hunters has finally returned from their exhausting mission. Inside the tavern, Captain Jonathan is celebrating with the guys that no one was injured and that the hunt was a complete success. And man, if you're enjoying this so far and haven't left a like yet, you're messing around. With a grin from ear to ear, the redhead says it's time for the most awaited moment of the hunt, to receive the hard-earned cash. The mercenaries then, with joy, celebrating the end of the sinister mission, ready to fill their pockets with gold. But Claire, with a keen eye, notices that the amount in coins seems to be much greater than the 70 they had agreed upon. The commander, for his part, explains that this extra amount is the result of a mix-up he caused at the delivery counter. He said there were 2 monsters there, in addition to the cubs, that the mission was much more dangerous than reported. The leader that he managed to squeeze 110 gold coins from the contractors, getting everyone in the mood, but the protagonist remains, wondering how they received money for a beast they didn't even truly face. At that moment, the sly man makes a suspicious face and admits that he told a little lie to boost the team's effort. The warriors laugh and give a thumbs up, agreeing that if no one discovered the hoax, then it is true. The young man sighs, thinking that this bunch of adventurers is quite peculiar and unconventional. Suddenly, the redhead puts his hand on the hero's shoulder, pulling him to discuss a serious matter about payment. He announces to everyone that he decided to give half of the mission profit to the new combat ally. The young man asks if he will really receive half since he only helped at the end in the fight against the beast. But the captain seriously replies that if it weren't for the rookie's help, everyone would have been in trouble at the quarry. The veteran asks the young man to accept the money joyfully because he deserves every penny of that valuable reward. The other group members agree happily and give a thumbs up, showing respect for the warrior's talent. Reflecting on his face, the adventurer thinks that between magic and traps, he was indeed a key piece for the victory of the mission. With a mug in hand, he realizes that not all people in this new world are bad. The captain then raises the mug with excitement, announcing that the round tonight is on him, and thus all the mercenaries start to drink and celebrate the victory of the tiring day. But the protagonist soon notices the blonde woman passing by and is curious about her way. In the middle of the party, the young man asks where the woman is going, and she responds with a smile that she is going to practice magic. Hearing this, the hero is totally surprised, trying to understand the reason for such effort. At that moment, outside, the sorceress sits on the ground under the full moonlight while a mystical energy begins to emerge. At this moment, the woman closes her eyes and concentrates, letting a bluish aura emanate in the air. Hidden behind a tree, the fighter observes, reflecting that the girl must be exhausted after the battle. With a contemplative look, the warrior analyzes the intense shine and is amazed by the technique. The adventurer wonders if it would be a good idea to try to learn magic in the future. He also asks himself if he can learn sorcery while carrying a bunch of heavy things. The blonde gets about the proposal. Surprised by her ease, the hero hears the sorceress say that she was already inclined to give him some gift. In any case, the woman states that he saved her from danger, unlike certain others, and that she will be very pleased to teach him. Throwing this in the captain's face, she complains that the group does not know how to protect their allies, but that the rookie is quite different. He, however, the redhead, interrupts the conversation, warning that magic is not learned overnight and that they need to leave the village in 2 days. Irritated, the girl suggests that the warrior travel with them, but the commander questions why such a strong hunter would want to accompany the group. Thus, the leader hugs the young man, saying that the brave fighter prefers to live his adventure alone and that it would be rude to disrupt his journey. At that moment, the protagonist reflects that he has nothing to do and feels that the mercenary is forcing an unwarranted pride. He then decides to invent and asks what the next destination of the team is, hearing from the redhead that they are going to the 4th Pioneer City. Maintaining his composure, the young man states that he plans to go in the same direction and asks if he can travel with them. Turning his back, the boy pretends that he can now learn spells on the way, while his 2 companions laugh at the invention. Suddenly, the 2 grab the boy with all the joy, shouting that it is a wild coincidence and they would love to have a strong ally. With a small smile on his face, the survivor realizes that his next destination has been decided in a rather calm manner. The next morning, the caravan begins its long journey, accompanied by a colossal creature carrying several heavy tents on its back. This enormous beast is called a Taraski, one of the few magical monsters that humanity has managed to domesticate for heavy transport. Walking near the beast, the hunter is astonished by its absurd size. Noticing that the group uses her instead of common horses, the redhead draws everyone's attention, warning that they need to hurry because they still have a long way to go. When night falls, the guy throws himself on the ground to meditate, while the mage is knocked out. He quickly realizes that learning new things is not easy, and the worst part is having to keep repeating everything, which gives him a bit of a headache. He remembers the lessons with his companion, noting that growth only happens by repeating the same stuff, even if progress is really slow. The young man continues to sweat a lot while reflecting that this phase of magical training is very tough and tends to get stuck at a certain level. However, he is already used to the pain of having to repeat the same move over and over again to achieve some results. The guy recalls the hard years he's gone through, all to survive and become even stronger. Then he opens his eyes, full of the will to fight and achieve what he desires. At that moment, a little magical light appears, shining in the air, showing that the hunter knows well that the path is hard, but it's worth it. Suddenly, the guy collapses on the ground, shaken, feeling the mana as if it were the first time, while the blonde gets and claps joyfully at his progress. But in his mind, he realizes, it took 10 days of struggle just to feel this. The task, my friend, is complicated. The mage sitting next to him lays it out. He is a bit slow, but still better than many who don't even feel the mana before biting the dust. The young woman announces that it's time for the second step and reaches into her bag searching for something crucial. She pulls out a shining vial and pours a magical blue liquid that exudes mystery into a very small bowl. Then, with a pair of gloves already on, she naturally asks the warrior to remove the upper part of his clothes. The young man almost falls back with this unusual request and looks at her with the greatest look of disbelief, not understanding what is happening. A wind blows through the trees of the dark forest. The young woman dips her finger into that strange blue liquid, but our hero tries to understand what madness is about to happen. With bare backs, the fighter asks what she is doing, and the blonde explains that she will draw a path to merge the energy into his body. After completing the mark, the teacher advises that she will inject the force and asks him to try to feel everything as possible, maintaining total concentration. The protagonist, taking a deep breath, agrees and positions himself to receive that unknown power. Her hand approaches his back, making the magical circle glow and sparks begin to fly. In the blink of an eye, the young man's body is surrounded by a bright blue light, leaving the hunter with wide eyes in astonishment. A colossal energy lifts dust from the ground as the survivor realizes that this power is at an absurd level. Now he feels an energy pulsating like lightning inside him, floating more densely than blood. The girl asks if Karti has finally gained any sense of mana. He, with a big smile, confirms that he feels something intense swirling within him, and the girl, filled with enthusiasm, says that this was just the first step to using spells. She explains that there are 3 basic stages in magic. First is to feel the energy, then to store it in the body, and finally to be able to use the power. Since he has already passed the first stage with flying colors, the young woman decides that it is time to go straight to the second stage. She warns that she will guide the mana to his heart, asking our brave one to create an imaginary space as if he were holding his breath. Sweating profusely, the protagonist closes his eyes and concentrates as much as possible, ready to store all that insane power. And it doesn't stop there. The partner, full of energy to start, pushing an immense wave of blue light. The magical symbol on the fighter's skin begins to glow fully, absorbing every little piece of that strong, wild magic. But suddenly, his vision changes completely, presenting a bizarre beast, a terrifying mixture of insect and mantis, and this giant green creature sprouts from nowhere in the darkness, in a way that would scare anyone. The gruesome monster remains motionless while the adventurer observes the shadowy illusion, not understanding why this image is invading his mind. The horrible beast slowly turns its head, revealing burning red eyes that stare at the warrior with surreal aggression. And as if that weren't enough, dozens of grotesque eyes open on the body of the beast, showing that this demon is a hard-level danger. Back in reality, a dark drop falls on the teacher's forehead, catching her by surprise as she feels a dark energy rising from nowhere and realizes that the situation is dire. The blonde is in shock, trying to understand what went wrong in the practice. At that exact moment, the blue magic around the survivor completely loses control, creating a dangerous demon king that leaves the mage in a state of terror. With tears in her eyes, she realizes that her own mana is being brutally drained by the young man's body. The tension rises. Suddenly, a furry tail appears out of nowhere and wraps tightly around the girl's waist, pulling her out of the confusion. Luckily, the red wolf appears, pulling the young woman away and ensuring her safety while the novice remains on the ground. The mage is thrown into the air, while the wolf's tail holds her firmly to avoid the imminent danger. When carefully placed on the ground, the young woman looks at the furry beast, trying to understand what led the creature to act that way. Breathing a sigh of relief, she notices that the creature recognized the mortal risk and acted quickly to save her from that overwhelming force. And at that moment, the protagonist's voice echoes through the area. All good? It passes as the blue magical aura finally dissipates. Looking at the teacher, the hunter asks if everything is alright, noticing that the girl seems completely tense and scared of the trouble. Still in shock, the blonde reflects that the dark illusion she saw was in fact a mental world, a clear manifestation of someone's power. This type of magical vision takes the form of a particular universe. Each one has its unique space, and she can't process how such a malignant and monstrous presence can be in the mind of her new partner. With a very serious expression, she approaches the boy and demands that he be completely honest about his mysterious past. The coroner then asks if by any chance the survivor consumed any mana core during his perilous journey. The warrior tilts his head, completely lost with this term he has never heard before. The mage quickly explains that they are the crystals of the monsters, and the guy confirms that he usually devours these shining essences, clearly scared. The girl loses her composure and asks since when he has been doing this madness and what the quantity is. Lee, the young man, reveals that he has been swallowing these pieces for 10 years, and estimates that he has consumed tens of thousands of these crystals. Seeing her expression, the adventurer asks if there is a problem with that, while the blonde that the situation is extremely serious. Trying to calm the tensions, the teacher steps in, detailing what happens when an ordinary human decides to eat a core. With a choked voice, she reveals that those who do this either die instantly or turn into a bizarre monster. At that moment, the hunter's face shines with the moonlight, as her conversation has left him quite intrigued. The girl begins to talk about karma, which is like a retribution. a heavy energy that lingers in the demon world and puts creatures on high alert. Anyone who absorbs this gains absurd power, and the mana core is a crystal made from that energy. Meanwhile, the group of adventurers continues their journey through the forest, but the mage cannot stop thinking about the situation, and the memory of the dark priest comes to her mind, invoking the memory of when the door to the other world opened, and some ruthless humans started devouring mana cores and even sacrificing others to feed the monsters. Then the young warrior mentions that he has been eating cores for 10 years and has consumed an insane amount of these crystals. The blonde begins to think if her new partner could be one of those dark priests, but she quickly dismisses the idea, knowing that he would never admit it or show what is going on inside. She reflects that the whole situation is fine. Meanwhile, the hunter, with no idea of the danger he is in, pulls out the core from a creature he just annihilated, and the mage watches, not believing what she sees, as he starts devouring the essence in front of her without hesitation. With her arms crossed, she observes, thinking that the guy is a true mystery. Then the healer warns that no matter how crazy it seems, he needs to stop swallowing mana cores. Hearing this, the young man reflects that she is wrong, but he is living proof that nothing bad happens to those who eat this, or he just remembers that he felt nothing when taking lives and that he lives in expectation of a good fight. Thus, he wonders if this desire to fight came because of the cores he has swallowed. The survivor then says he will try, but the blonde keeps asking him not to ignore her warning. If he continues with this, he won't even be able to use magic. He asks if it's true, and the mage, not believing, emphasizes that this is nowhere near what matters more than his life. Then, overcoming the girl, he explains that the way he is now, it will be very hard to go around using mana. The hunter is confused, having never heard of this, and the journey continues until the 4th Pioneer City. Upon arriving there, they come across a statue of an angel and a huge crowd in the main square. The protagonist comments on the number of mercenaries there, but the captain says this is nothing, and reveals that the mission is being supervised by a holy knight. This knight is named Raymond. When our hero sees the knight, he is left speechless, hyper-impressed with the guy's presence. He realizes that this knight has an aura and is not just anyone. The young man asks if it is always like this when a knight is on the job, and the hunter asks if the golden beetle is a beast. The mage ponders the question, realizing her friend's confusion. She figures out that he really is out of the loop. Then the redhead explains that the golden beetle was the greatest ruler of the region and the richest guy, but then the group leader reveals that this powerful individual died recently. The adventurer asks if he was murdered, and the mercenary responds that there are only rumors. Then the survivor grows curious and discovers that the deceased left 2 children who are inheriting the fortune of the golden beetle, but one of the newcomers asserts that he kidnapped all of them to profit. At this moment, Team Marlene Black is called to present themselves before Gerald. The captain grabs his new ally, saying that it's finally their turn. Thus, the redhead introduces the young man to the knight, stating that he is the key piece of the group. The crowd wonders, is he the famous head crusher, but thinks he doesn't look strong. The hunter has no idea what this nickname is about. With a serious expression, the holy knight silently observes the 2 mercenaries. Then Raymond announces that the Black Marlene group has been hired for 100 gold coins. The group's leader jumps with excitement because he will earn a fortune just to transport a cargo. The redhead explains that half of the payment is for the mission and the other half is for reputation. He also gives the title of head crusher to the young man, since it was thanks to this they got the money. The mercenary explains that this nickname means the kid crushes the monsters he faces. And, without showing any emotion, the survivor reflects that whoever came up with that name has no good moves. While the captain becomes the king of gold, the hunter thinks that somehow this fame will help him learn the mana arts. Night falls in the city, and at the mercenary group's base, the flickering lights indicate movement inside. Muscular men are grappling in an improvised arena. In the middle of the fight, one delivers a powerful punch to the opponent's face. The mage asks the boy if he's sure about entering the arena, and he replies that knights use mana arts. He reveals that his plan is to attract their attention to learn the arts, and tells his friend to relax. The warrior understands that holy knights get excited with very strong people, and that, if they decide to acknowledge his power, he'll receive special treatment. In his view, this part of showing strength is smooth, and he faces his first opponent in the arena. He knows that the arena is the ideal place to risk his reputation and attract the knight's attention. Without stalling, the first adversary charges at him, throwing a punch in his direction, and the hunter easily dodges, showing absurd agility. He counters with a precise hit to the challenger's face. In a quick move, he strikes the brute's nape, leaving him dazed. And, to finish the fight, the warrior delivers a powerful knee strike that ends the battle decisively. The crowd goes wild, and the new challenger jumps into the arena that he is next in line. Dude, the holy knight is in the VIP box. He was just watching while having a drink, and Emelika realized he had caught his attention. He knew he could not relax because that was just the beginning of his plan to be respected by the knight, and he needed to take down much more than just a few guys in the arena. The boy thought that if he only achieved 2 or 3 victories, that would not be enough. It would just make the knight curious about where a fighter like him had come from. But if he took down dozens, the story would be completely different, you know. He believed that if Rayman were a true knight, he would react in a specific way. In the end, the knight turned to the apprentice and ordered him to fight against the young man. This apprentice, named Rex, was upon hearing the order to fight against that mercenary. The survivor reflected that when that moment came, the real negotiation would begin. So when Rex prepared to enter, our hero simply refused to fight. With this refusal, the guy began his negotiation to learn the mana arts, leaving Rex completely stunned. At night, the scene shifts and shows the mercenaries' quarters under the light of the full moon. Inside, the blonde mage seemed by everything that had happened. The captain of the group also did not understand the attitude of the new partner, and in the arena, the fighters were in at Malika's refusal. Rex from the VIP box, asking why he did not want to fight. The apprentice continued to stare at the situation while his master observed the scene unfold. The knight asked if the fighter was injured or something like that. With a little smile at the corner, the adventurer showed his bandaged hand and said he had not been hurt. The sacred knight then questioned the reason for the refusal. Since everything seemed fine, the young man revealed that he was a mercenary in search of money and power and because of that could not fight for free. With that smile, he suggested a small wager. The sacred knight, curious, asked if there was something he really wanted since the bet needed to have interest. The hunter admitted he was nobody important, but he had more money than he knew how to spend to prove it. He lifted a bag full of gold coins. The audience began to laugh at him, thinking the guy was crazy for wanting to bet against the holy knight. The curious apprentice Rex teased him for the mercenary's boldness. He was about to reject the money, but the master interrupted him, preventing him from speaking further. With a face, the knight revealed that he had another proposal in mind. He warned that he would not hold the fighter responsible for any harm that occurred during the fight. The white-haired knight declared that this was what the young men intended. The crazy man understood that he could fight with everything and accepted, saying he would say whatever he wanted after the duel. Then the two faced each other in the arena while Rex prepared for the battle that was about to unfold. The expression of the knight's apprentice showed total and seriousness for the fight. Our hero was also focused and serious, preparing for combat. The crowd his nickname and commented that they had bet their entire fortune on the kid's victory. His allies watched and the sorceress asked for a signal if things went south, but he replied not to worry, with a smirk. The survivor stated that he would emerge victorious from this fight. Rex asked the master how seriously he should fight, and received the order to go all out. A knight warned his apprentice that this mercenary was not an opponent to be taken lightly. The young redhead nodded and let a powerful golden aura flow around his body. The audience was as they observed the mana arts and began to cheer for the knight. Thus, with a glowing foot, he stomped hard on the ground with insane speed. An apprentice advanced toward our hero to deliver the first blow. The hunter watched the attack and realized that his rival was on a completely different level than the other guys he had faced before. The X unleashed a punch with clean and raw force, enveloped by the golden energy of mana. The warrior understood that if he took that blow, he might not leave alive. With a thought, he thought this was an art of mana and that the battle was going to be a lot of fun. The young man then managed to block the apprentice's powerful fist using his bandaged hand, creating a tremendous shockwave of golden energy. The impact spread across the arena, throwing our hero backward, sliding several meters on the ground. With a serious look, the apprentice asked the name of his rival, who introduced himself as a redhead, and then declared that he would make him regret underestimating the holy knight. Hearing this, the captain became frantic, thinking that the head crusher was about to get hurt in the fight. The mage was also filled with concern for her partner, who seemed to be at a disadvantage. Meanwhile, the holy knight remained seated in his box, looking quite relaxed, watching everything unfold. The X began to unleash a flurry of quick attacks, but the boy dodged them all with impressive skill. He expertly and precisely blocked the redhead's golden blows. Observing the fight, the knight started to feel a strange vibe in the air and became pensive. He recalled that the mercenary had defeated others with his strike, but now it was different. His movements were very restrained. Raymond questioned whether he was hiding any plans. With a war cry, the knight apprentice prepared for the new attack. The guy's fist glowed intensely with mana energy, fully concentrated for a final blow. An attack landed squarely on our hero, who didn't even try to dodge it. But with a movement that left everyone in shock, he spread out the mana art. A captain, looking as if he had seen a ghost, wondered how that was possible. He couldn't believe what he had just witnessed, thinking it was something surreal. With a small injury on his hand, the hunter reflected that it was enough. With shining eyes, he said that this had already been sufficient to feel the redhead's combat power. Then, he clenched his fist and announced that it was time to test the opponent's durability. With a devastating punch, he struck the apprentice's stomach, who was not expecting it. The young redhead's eyes widened, feeling insane pain from the unexpected blow. The knight was astonished by the apprentice's reaction, who seemed to have been punched by the devil. On his knees on the ground, the apprentice clutched his stomach, unable to get up from the pain. The hunter noticed that the mercenary was just having fun with the fight. He then asks if it is the art of mana that keeps him standing even after such a strong blow. The apprentice is curious to know how far the opponent can go. With a fighter questions how many more blows the young knight can take. At that moment, the apprentice becomes upon seeing his master approaching him from behind. The knight interrupts the fight and declares that it is enough, for his apprentice has lost. A holy knight says that as promised he will give what he asked for and ends the fight. Our hero felt a bit as he was just starting to warm up. But with a fojin on his face, he reflects that his plan worked. The audience went fly, celebrating the great victory of the head smasher. The scene then shifts to the huge and luxurious property of the golden beetle at night. Inside, someone is stuffing themselves with food in an uncouth manner. It is Derek and Cedric, the two sons of the deceased, who were enjoying a feast. One of them complains that it will take 10 days to enter the barrier and curses the Church Alliance. The other agrees and says that they always make a lot of promises but deliver. Worried, one of them his hand on the food, wondering if they will be okay until then. Then the other comments that they can only pray that their bodies hold up, revealing something. On their backs we can see some strange informations that are blue. Far from there, Raimundo is close to a tree during what seems like training. The art of mana is a technique that uses energy to enhance the body or weapons. Anyone with a bit of talent can use it, but mastery is what gives power. With this ability one can even mountains. Using the sacred flame strike, the knight a tree in half with the knight then his sword while a golden aurora envelops him completely. Rex says that his master is simply incredible. The redhead continues to praise the knight, who just says it is now his turn. Rex, who now looks like a wolf hybrid, agrees to start his training. Our hero observes everything from afar, finding the apprentice's appearance a bit. He looks at the felled tree, and realizes that this is much stronger than the power of reggae. Still, he reflects that, at this level, it should be possible to cut the tree without technique. The knight appears next to our hero, and asks him to concentrate, since he showed how it is done. He explains that, just as the muscles contract when flexing the arm, the master teaches that the young man needs to hold the mana within his own muscles. The boy thinks that, until now, the teaching resembles what Clay taught him. Suddenly, a blue aura appears on his face, leaving him completely surprised. The energy flows throughout his body and he wonders when he managed to accumulate so much mana. He remembers when his friend transferred mana to him and realizes that this energy is blue. Then a purple and bluish aurora begins to glow intensely around the boy's body. The knight then instructs the young man to start using this mana slowly moving, but he is surprised to see a dark purple aura emerging. At that moment the warrior draws his sword, which is now completely enveloped by this dark energy. Raimundo is in shock when he realizes that he is using mana arts right after learning. The knight then wonders what kind of sinister mana is coming from the boy's sword and explains that the mana arts take on the color and shape based on the user's inner world. With a serious expression, the master questions what exactly exists within the new disciple. A confident smirk. The hunter holds his shining sword and prepares to test his power. He then executes a series of impressive strikes with his newly discovered skill. A boy reflects that the technique seems somewhat inefficient for all the effort he is putting in, but he admits that the appearance of his blade with this purple aura is stunning. It looks really cool and he wants to test it soon. The scene then shifts to the caravan that continues its journey using giant cargo turtles. The mage is impressed by the speed at which he learned and he thanks her for the help. The young man asks if his friend is okay and says that her mana must have flowed into him. The healer looked a bit lost for words, but trying to calm the situation, she said everything was fine and that the guy could take it as a gift for helping her. The warrior thought it was too much for him, but he realized that it made him learn much faster. Then the squire appeared and started laughing at the young man for being so happy with the basics. The redhead didn't let it slide and told the guy not to slack off in training and to be grateful for Rayman wasting time with him. The hunter, looking at that knight, wondered if he was still bitter about the defeat from yesterday. A smile decided to tease the squire's pride just for fun. At that moment, Rayman gave a slap on the squire's horse's rear, startling him. The beast became all nervous and reared up, nearly causing the young redhead to fall off. The master immediately scolded the squire, while the hero thought it was a tremendous waste of time. Suddenly, a shout of "You idiots!" echoed. The boy was completely about what was happening. Plates of food were flying, as someone screamed denying they were hungry and demanding to be served. The protagonist asked what was going on, and the knight quickly told him not to worry. He explained that only the Golden Beetle's children were abusing their power, as usual. The knight confirmed that the Golden Beetle's children had not stopped eating since his father passed away. He advised ignoring them, as thinking about it would only bring a headache. But the protagonist found all of this very strange, and a bad feeling began to grow inside him. The more those two devoured, the stronger this bizarre sensation in the warrior's chest became. Suddenly, a grotesque vision of a hideous creature crossed his mind, as if something terrible was about to happen. The hunter felt that a demonic beast was about to attack the caravan. With this intuition gripping him, the young man's eyes widened, ready for danger. At that moment, one of the giant turtles began to go wild, thrashing around and knocking over everything it was carrying. The other beast of burden lost control and started to wreak havoc around it. That chaos sent everyone into a panic at the sight of the animal carrying the customers suddenly going insane. At the moment of realization, the holy knight understood that all of this was related to the children of the deceased noble. Then Rayman called his apprentice Rex, who immediately responded to his master's call. The young redhead prepared for battle, unleashing his golden mana aura, which shone brightly. Rayman then instructed that the safety of the customers was the priority, and asked to calm the creature. The immense turtle continued its uncontrolled march, while Rex agreed with his mentor's order. Suddenly, sharp spikes began to sprout from the creature's back, and to everyone's horror, the bizarre monster with tentacles and sharp teeth emerged from there. The mage and her companion were thrown back, while she wondered if that was a demon. The girl explained that a demon is a human who has turned into a beast due to karma. The guy was to think that a human could have turned into that. Hearing all of this, the holy knight gave a slight smile, as if he found it interesting. Without wasting time, the master leaped towards the creature, sword in hand, ready to start the combat. He prepared to use his powerful holy flame attack again. That golden attack sliced the creature in half with a precision that left anyone. However, to the knight's complete surprise, he realized something was wrong and shouted for his apprentice's name. The creature's tentacles came at Rex, who had no time to react. With a fierce shout, the redhead used his mana abilities to cut through the tentacles that were coming at him full force. The pieces of the monster fell to the ground, severed by the young apprentice's attack. However, to everyone's terror, the main body of the monster began to regenerate at an absurd speed. The master was completely to see that and shouted for Rex to wait a moment. At that moment, a giant monstrous face with red eyes loomed over the young man. Look, the guy was all scared, grinding his teeth as that threatening thing approached. Suddenly, a knife sliced something forcefully, and blood splattered everywhere, but it was all in vain because he was swallowed nonetheless. And that's it, folks. If this video does well, you know there will be a continuation. So leave a like, subscribe and comment there to support. It really helps the channel. And now enjoy the next video.